They say family is the most precious gift we can receive in this life. The people who know us best, who share our history, who are supposed to be there through life's greatest challenges and sweetest victories. But sometimes, the people we love the most can inflict the deepest wounds. My name is Gloria Martinez, and for 38 years I believed that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything for my children's happiness. I convinced myself that one day, all those sacrifices would be recognized and rewarded with love and appreciation. I couldn't have been more wrong. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I never expected to find myself alone on Christmas Day at 67 years old. After raising 3 children and welcoming 5 beautiful grandchildren into this world, I imagined my golden years would be filled with noisy family gatherings, cherished traditions, and the warm comfort of being surrounded by the family I had nurtured for nearly 4 decades. Instead, I found myself sitting in my small condo in Ridgewood Heights, staring at a frozen TV dinner while across town, my son Jason, his wife Vanessa, and my grandchildren celebrated in their sprawling colonial home, a home I had helped them afford through years of financial support. The path that led me to that lonely Christmas began long before the actual holiday. It started with small things: Vanessa rescheduling our weekly coffee dates, Jason calling less frequently, invitations to family events arriving later and later, often just days before, as if I were an afterthought. I told myself they were busy. Jason's architectural firm was growing rapidly, and Vanessa was heavily involved in the social circles that came with their newfound status. The children had sports and music lessons and play dates. It was natural they wouldn't have as much time. For me, I compensated by making myself indispensable. When they mentioned wanting to upgrade their SUV to something more appropriate for Jason's client meetings, I offered to help with the payments on a luxury Mercedes GLS. When Vanessa complained about their outdated kitchen not being suitable for entertaining, I dipped into my savings to contribute to a complete renovation with top-of-the-line appliances. When they wanted to send my grandchildren to an exclusive private school, I liquidated investments to help cover the tuition. "You're the best, Mom," Jason would say, hugging me quickly before rushing off to another important meeting. "We couldn't do all this without you." Those words warmed my heart each time. I had been a single mother since Jason was 12, working 2 jobs as a hospital administrator and weekend bookkeeper to ensure my children never felt the financial strain after. Their father left us for his young secretary. Those years had been challenging, but I had prided myself on providing stability, love, and opportunities for my children despite our circumstances. Now it seemed natural to continue supporting Jason, especially since my other 2 children, Sophia and Miguel, were financially independent and needed less assistance. Jason had always been my most ambitious child, the one who dreamed biggest, and watching him succeed filled me with pride, even if that success came partly through my continued financial sacrifices. The first real indication that something was changing came during Thanksgiving. Traditionally, we had always gathered at my home. Even after downsizing to my condo, I had maintained this tradition, cramming everyone into my modest dining area, using card tables as extensions, and spending days preparing family recipes passed down through generations. This year, however, Vanessa called just 2 weeks before the holiday. "Gloria, we've been thinking," she said, her voice carrying that overly sweet tone she used when delivering unwelcome news. "With the kitchen renovation finally complete, we want to host Thanksgiving this year. We have so much more space, and Jason wants to invite some colleagues who might become potential clients." "Oh," I said, caught off guard. "Of course, that makes sense. What can I bring?" There was a slight pause. "Actually, we've hired a caterer. Presentation is everything when you're networking, you know? But maybe you could come a little early and help with the children? We'll be quite busy with preparations and attending to our guests." I swallowed my disappointment. The holiday wasn't about the location, I told myself. It was about family being together. And if I could help by watching my grandchildren, that was still a meaningful contribution. On Thanksgiving Day, I arrived at their home at 9 a.m. as requested, arms loaded with small gifts for the grandchildren. The house was already buzzing with activity, caterers arranging elaborate displays in the newly renovated kitchen, florists setting up centerpieces, and a woman I didn't recognize directing it all with clipboard in hand. "Oh, Gloria, you're here," Vanessa said, air-kissing me on both cheeks. "The kids are in the playroom. Could you keep them occupied until about 4? We don't want them underfoot while everything's being set up." "Of course," I replied. "But shouldn't they be part of some of the preparations? Making hand-traced turkey? Decorations or helping with simple tasks? Those were always special memories for Jason and his siblings." Vanessa's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's sweet, but we're going for a specific aesthetic this year. The decorator has everything planned to the last detail. Feel free to do crafts with them in the playroom, though." I spent the next 7 hours largely sequestered with my grandchildren, in their playroom, occasionally hearing laughter and conversation as guests began to arrive. At 4:30, Vanessa appeared at the doorway. "The children should get ready for dinner now," she announced, then added in a lower voice, "Gloria, we've set up a small table for you and the children in the sunroom. The main dining room is rather full with Jason's colleagues." I felt as if I'd been doused with cold water. "You want me to sit separately from the rest of the family? On Thanksgiving?" "It's just for this year," she said dismissively. "It's important for Jason to make the right impression with these people. They're very influential in architectural circles." That evening, as I sat at a folding table in the sunroom, with my grandchildren, hearing the muffled laughter and conversation from the formal dining room, I had my first inkling that something fundamental had shifted in my relationship with my son and his wife. I was no longer an honored family member. I had become the children's caretaker, someone to be managed and placed out of sight when convenient. But even then, I convinced myself it was a single incident, a momentary lapse in judgment driven by Jason's professional ambitions. Surely Christmas would be different. Christmas had always been our most cherished family time. I was wrong about that too. The moment I truly understood my place in my son's life wasn't during that disappointing Thanksgiving dinner. It wasn't when Vanessa forgot to invite me to my granddaughter Emma's dance recital. It wasn't even when Jason stopped answering my calls, letting them go to voicemail only to respond hours later with brief, hurried texts. No, it happened exactly 13 days before Christmas, on a cold Tuesday evening as I was wrapping presents for my grandchildren. My phone rang, and I felt a flutter of excitement seeing Jason's name on the screen. We hadn't spoken properly in weeks, and I was eager to finalize Christmas plans. "Jason, I was just wrapping presents for the kids," I answered cheerfully. "Hi, Mom." His voice sounded strained, lacking its usual confidence. "That's actually why I'm calling, about Christmas." I waited, suddenly aware of the unnatural pause, the slight clearing of his throat that had always signaled difficult news since he was a teenager. "Vanessa and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if we did Christmas differently this year." "Differently?" I echoed, my hands unconsciously tightening around a half-wrapped toy train for my youngest grandson. "Yes, we've decided to have a more intimate celebration this year. Just us and the children. And then on Christmas evening, we're hosting a dinner for some very important clients who are in town without their families." The implication hung in the air for several seconds before I found my voice again. "You're saying I'm not invited to Christmas? At all?" Jason sighed, and I could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when uncomfortable. "It's not that you're not invited, Mom. We're just doing things differently this year. Vanessa feels that the holidays have become too chaotic. With extended family and with these clients coming, we need time to prepare and make sure the house is perfect." "I see," I said, though I didn't. Not really. And what about Christmas morning? Surely your business dinner doesn't affect opening presents with the children? Another uncomfortable pause. Well, Vanessa thinks it would be confusing for the kids. To have Christmas morning with you and then another celebration later. She wants to establish our own family traditions now that the children are getting older. Our own family traditions. The phrase echoed in my mind, its meaning unmistakable. I was no longer considered part of their family unit. I was extended family now, an outsider. Mom, are you still there? Jason prompted when I didn't immediately respond. Yes, I managed. I'm trying to understand. After everything, I'm not welcome at Christmas? Don't be so dramatic, he said, his tone shifting to one of irritation. It's just 1 year. We can do something the weekend after, maybe. Take you to brunch at that place you like in the valley. A belated meal at a restaurant as a consolation prize for missing Christmas with my grandchildren. My throat tightened. What did I do wrong, Jason? The question slipped out before I could stop it. You haven't done anything wrong, he replied, quickly. It's just... Vanessa feels you can be a bit... much sometimes. You know, with the kids and the traditions and all your suggestions about how we should do things. A bit much? I repeated, the words hitting like physical blows. Her words, not mine, he backpedaled. Look, it's just that we're in a different social circle now. The firm is taking off, we're connecting with influential people, and Vanessa is very conscious about the image we present. And I don't fit that image, I stated flatly, finally understanding. Mom, please don't make this difficult. It's one Christmas. We'll see you after the holidays. As the conversation wound down with hollow promises of making it up to me, something crystallized in my mind. Something I should have recognized long ago. The son I had sacrificed everything for. Working multiple jobs to put him through college, depleting my retirement fund to help with his first home, maintaining the payments on his luxury car, bankrolling. Private school for my grandchildren now found me embarrassing, inconvenient, not prestigious enough for his new life. After we hung up, I sat motionless among the half-wrapped presents, facing a truth I had been avoiding for years. The financial sacrifices I had made weren't being received with gratitude, but with entitlement. The money wasn't bringing us closer. It was enabling a lifestyle that increasingly excluded me. I picked up a photo from my side table. Jason, Vanessa, and the children posed in front of their newly renovated home, all perfect smiles and coordinated outfits. Below it sat my most recent credit card statement, with the $1,185 monthly payment for their Mercedes SUV highlighted in yellow. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. That car. The sleek, status symbol vehicle that Vanessa insisted was essential for Jason's image with clients. The car I had committed to paying for over 5 years because it would really help them establish themselves in the right circles. I ran my finger over the statement, remembering how they had originally asked for my help with a sensible mid-range vehicle. Somehow, during the shopping process, Vanessa had steered them toward the top-of-the-line luxury model instead. We might, as well, invest in something that makes the right statement, she had said at the dealership. It's only a couple hundred more per month. A couple hundred more that I had absorbed without complaint, just as I had absorbed countless other small increases in my financial support over the years. The next credit card payment was due in 3 days. If I wasn't family enough to be included in Christmas morning, perhaps I wasn't family enough to keep making payments on a vehicle I never drove for people who didn't value my presence in their lives. I reached for my phone and pulled up my bank's website. With steady fingers, I canceled the automatic payment to the luxury car lender. Then I went a step further, calling the credit card company to remove the merchant from my authorized payments list. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment, Mrs. Martinez?" the customer service representative asked. "Absolutely. Certain," I replied, feeling a surprising sense of calm. "I won't be making any further payments on that account." After hanging up, I expected to feel guilty or anxious about my decision. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: dignity, self-respect, the recognition that I deserved better treatment than I had been receiving. I looked at the pile of expensive presents I had carefully selected for my grandchildren, presents that had stretched my monthly budget to its limits. For a moment, I considered returning them. But no, my issues were with Jason and Vanessa, not with innocent children who didn't understand the adult dynamics at play. Instead, I wrote a new set of gift tags. To be opened on December 26th, with "Love, Grandma Gloria." The children would still receive their gifts, just not on Christmas Day, not as part of a celebration I was excluded from. As I finished wrapping the presents that evening, I felt something shifting inside me, a fundamental realignment of how I viewed my relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. For too long, I had equated financial support with love, believing that my sacrifices would automatically translate into appreciation and inclusion. Now I understood that true family bonds couldn't be purchased, and it was long past time for me to stop trying. The next morning, I awoke with a clarity and purpose I hadn't felt in years. If I wasn't welcome at their Christmas celebration, I needed to create a meaningful holiday of my own. And perhaps more importantly, I needed to reclaim my financial independence and self-worth. What I didn't know then was that my simple decision to cancel that car payment would set in motion a series of events that would transform not just the holidays, but my entire relationship with Jason and Vanessa. And, most significantly, my relationship with myself. I never imagined my life would unfold this way. At 67, I had envisioned myself hosting Sunday dinners in a home filled with family photographs, dispensing wisdom and cookies to grandchildren, who genuinely wanted to hear stories about their father's childhood, and being valued as the family matriarch who had sacrificed to give them all a better life. Instead, I found myself alone in a modest 2-bedroom condo in Ridgewood Heights, a practical residence I had purchased after selling our family home at Jason's suggestion 5 years earlier. "It's too big for just you, Mom," he had said. "Think of all the maintenance, and the money from the sale could really help with your retirement." What he hadn't mentioned was how the proceeds would gradually flow into his family's lifestyle, a fact I was only now fully confronting. My journey began in the small farming community of Esperanza, where I was born to immigrant parents who had arrived from Mexico with nothing but determination and dreams for their children. My father worked the fields while my mother took in laundry and mending. By the time I was 10, I was helping my mother with her sewing work, developing a skill that would later help put me through college. I was the first in my family to graduate high school, and through a combination of scholarships, part-time jobs, and my sewing, I managed to earn a degree in business administration. My parents beamed with pride at my graduation, their sacrifices vindicated in that moment. I met Robert Martinez during my final year of college. He was charismatic, ambitious, and working as a junior executive at a regional insurance company. We married within a year, and I took a position in hospital administration, excited to begin building our life together. Sophia came first, then Jason 2 years later, and finally Miguel 3 years after that. Those early years were busy but joyful. Robert's career advanced steadily, and we moved to a larger home in a good school district. I worked part-time so I could be present for our children while still contributing to our family's finances. Everything changed when Jason turned 12. That was the year Robert's midlife crisis arrived in the form of his 23-year-old secretary, Brittany. Their affair wasn't particularly original: late nights at the office, mysterious business trips, the classic signs I chose to ignore until confronted with irrefutable evidence. I need a fresh start, Gloria, Robert said as he packed his things. You and the kids will be fine. You've always been the stronger one anyway. Just like that, he walked away from 15 years of marriage and 3 children, leaving us with a mortgage, school expenses, and a fraction of our former household income. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. Within a week, I had secured a full-time position at the hospital and taken on weekend bookkeeping work for local businesses. My sewing machine came out of storage, and I began taking orders for special occasion dresses, working late into the night after the children were asleep. The divorce settlement provided some child support, but Robert's promises of generosity quickly gave way to minimum payments and frequent tight months when his new family's expenses took priority. His visits with the children became increasingly sporadic, especially after Brittany gave birth to their daughter. Those years were exhausting but clarifying. I discovered reserves of strength I never knew I possessed. I learned to stretch a dollar until it begged for mercy, to maintain a brave face for my children even on days when I could barely keep my eyes open from fatigue, to be both mother and father at soccer games and dance recitals and parent-teacher conferences. Most importantly, I vowed that my children would never lack for opportunities despite our changed circumstances. When Sophia showed artistic talent, I found a way to pay for painting classes. When Miguel needed a math tutor, I bartered bookkeeping services for sessions with a retired teacher. And when Jason expressed interest in architecture, I worked extra weekends to buy the specialized computer programs he needed. "You're amazing, Mom," Jason would say, his eyes bright with ambition as he showed me his latest design. "Someday I'm going to build you a beautiful house to thank you for everything." Those words sustained me through countless exhausting days. The children grew up resilient and determined. Sophia earned an art scholarship to State University, where she met her future husband, David. They now lived modestly but happily in Portland with their 2 children, Sophia working as an art therapist, while David taught high school science. Miguel had joined the military right after high school, served 4 years, and then used his GI Bill benefits to get a degree in physical therapy. Now married to his college sweetheart, Luis, they had adopted a little girl and lived within an hour's drive of my condo. They visited regularly, insisting I join them for dinner at least twice a month despite their busy schedules. Jason, my middle child, had always been the most ambitious, the most driven to escape the financial insecurity of our post-divorce years. He worked tirelessly through high school, earning scholarships that, combined with my contributions and student loans, allowed him to attend a prestigious architecture program. During his final year of college, he met Vanessa Whitmore, the daughter of a successful commercial real estate developer. Beautiful, polished, and accustomed to privilege, Vanessa recognized Jason's talent and drive immediately. What began as a casual romance quickly became serious. I still remember their first visit to our modest home. I had spent days cleaning, cooking Jason's favorite dishes, and even sewing new curtains to brighten the living room. Vanessa had been perfectly pleasant, complimenting my enchiladas and asking appropriate questions about family photos. But I hadn't missed her subtle grimace when our elderly cat jumped on the sofa, or the way her eyes cataloged every outdated fixture and worn piece of furniture. "Your mother is charming," she said to Jason in the kitchen, not realizing I could hear from the hallway. "Very maternal. Does she always cook this much food for just one guest?" Their engagement a year later didn't surprise me, though the speed of their wedding plans did. Vanessa had a vision for their future, and it didn't include a long engagement. The wedding was held at her parents' country club, an elaborate affair that made me acutely aware of the disparity between our families. Edward Whitmore, Vanessa's father, took me aside during the reception. "Your son has tremendous potential," he said, swirling expensive scotch in a crystal tumbler. "Vanessa sees it. I see it. With the right connections and opportunities, he could go very far." The implication was clear. Jason had married into a family that could open doors. My modest connections never could. After the honeymoon, Vanessa's father helped them secure their first home in an upscale neighborhood. A suitable address is everything in this business, he explained, and offered Jason a position designing properties for Whitmore Development's commercial projects. For the first few years, Jason and Vanessa maintained regular contact. Sunday dinners twice a month, phone calls several times a week, inclusion in all holiday celebrations. Jason seemed genuinely determined to keep me involved in their lives, especially after Emma was born, followed by Lucas, and then little Max. The shift began subtly, around the time Jason left Whitmore Development to start his own architectural firm. Suddenly, there was a new urgency to their lifestyle, a need to project success and prosperity even before the firm became profitable. Perception is reality in this business, Mom, Jason explained when I questioned the wisdom of the expensive office space in the city's trendiest district. Clients won't trust us with multi-million-dollar projects if we look like we're cutting corners. That was the first time I offered significant financial help, co-signing the lease for his office space and providing the security deposit. It seemed reasonable at the time, a temporary measure until his business found its footing. I didn't realize then that I was setting a precedent that would gradually erode both my savings and my place in their lives. As Jason's firm slowly gained recognition and clients, Vanessa's expectations and social ambitions grew proportionally. The spacious home in a good neighborhood was no longer sufficient. They needed a showplace where they could entertain clients and industry contacts. Their reliable family car wasn't projecting the right image. They needed a luxury vehicle befitting Jason's rising status. And with each new expense, each status upgrade, came another carefully framed request for my temporary assistance. It's an investment in Jason's future, Vanessa would explain, her smile perfectly calibrated to convey both appreciation and expectation. And of course, what benefits Jason's career benefits the children's future as well. How could I argue with that logic? What grandmother doesn't want to secure her grandchildren's future? What mother doesn't want to see her son succeed? And so, one decision at a time, one temporary arrangement after another, I had steadily depleted my retirement savings and taken on debt to maintain monthly payments for luxuries I would never have purchased for myself. Until now. Until this Christmas exclusion that had finally forced me to see the reality of our relationship. As I stared at the gift tags I had just rewritten, to be opened on December 26th, I felt an unexpected emotion, rising within me anger. Not just at Jason and Vanessa, but at myself for enabling this situation for so long. Tomorrow, I decided, would be different. Tomorrow, I would begin reclaiming my life, my finances, and my self-respect. The morning after I canceled the car payment, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Instead of my usual routine, checking my phone for messages from Jason or Vanessa, scanning social media for new photos of my grandchildren, I made a strong cup of coffee and sat down at my small dining table with a notepad and calculator. It was time to take a hard, honest look at exactly what my relationship with Jason and Vanessa was costing me. Not just financially, but emotionally and psychologically as well. The numbers were sobering. Over the past 5 years, I had loaned them $42,000 for the down payment on their current house, with only vague mentions of repayment when the firm really takes off. I was making the $285 monthly payments on their Mercedes SUV, a commitment that still had 3 years remaining. I contributed $3,000 per quarter toward my grandchildren's private school tuition, and there were countless smaller expenses. The kitchen renovation, landscaping for their backyard, the designer furniture for Jason's office, even the luxury watch Vanessa had insisted Jason needed to look successful with clients. All told, I had given them well over $150,000 in the past 5 years, with monthly ongoing commitments that consumed nearly 70% of my fixed income. The financial reality was stark. At this rate, I would deplete my remaining savings within 3 years. After that, I would be completely dependent on my Social Security checks, which wouldn't even cover my basic living expenses, let alone the payments I was making on their behalf. But the emotional ledger was even more revealing. I made a second column on my notepad. What I receive in return. This list was painfully short. Monthly visits that had gradually decreased to every 6 weeks, then every 2 months, and now seemed to happen only when they needed something. Phone calls that went unanswered or were returned days later. My grandchildren, who I adored, being increasingly scheduled with activities that made it difficult for me to see them. And now, exclusion from Christmas, the final evidence that I was valued for my checkbook, not my presence. As I stared at these columns, what I gave versus what I received, a memory surfaced from years earlier, when Jason was in college. He had called, desperate for money to repair his car. I had sent it immediately, scraping together the funds by selling a gold bracelet that had belonged to my grandmother. A month later, I saw photos on his social media of a spring break trip to Cancun that he had somehow afforded while claiming he couldn't repay me. When confronted, he had been defensive. That was different money, Mom. Tyler's parents paid for, most of it as a graduation gift to him, and said he could bring a friend. I didn't think you'd want me to miss a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity just because I owed you a few $100s. I had let it go, telling myself it was what mothers did, sacrifice without expectation. But now I saw that incident for what it was, the first sign of a pattern that would define our relationship for decades to come. My phone rang, interrupting my calculations. It was Sophia, my oldest, calling from Portland. Mom, how are you? The fur. Kids made you Christmas cards and we're mailing them today so they'll arrive in time. Hearing her warm, genuine voice brought tears to my eyes. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I can't wait to see them. So, she continued, what are your Christmas plans? Are you doing the usual dinner at Jason's? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't told my other children about being excluded from Jason's Christmas celebrations. Some misguided sense of loyalty, or perhaps shame, had kept me silent. Actually, I said slowly, there's been a change of plans this year. Jason and Vanessa are doing something different. Different how? Sophia asked, her tone sharpening slightly. My oldest had always been perceptive. They're having an intimate family Christmas and then hosting a business dinner. I'm not invited. The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. They excluded you from Christmas? Sophia finally said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. After everything you do for them? The car payments, the school tuition, all of it? So she knew about those arrangements. I shouldn't have been surprised. My children had always been close despite the geographic distance between them. It's complicated, I said weakly, falling back on my habitual defense of Jason. No, Mom, it's not complicated. It's wrong. Sophia's voice was firm. David and I have been saying for years that you do too much for them. They take advantage of your generosity, and now they have the nerve to exclude you from Christmas? It's unacceptable. Her righteous indignation was both validating and uncomfortable. For so long, I had rationalized my financial support of Jason and Vanessa as simply doing what any mother would do, helping their children succeed. Hearing my arrangements characterized as being taken advantage of forced me to confront a reality I had been avoiding. I've actually been thinking about making some changes, I admitted. Yesterday, I canceled the automatic payment for their car. Good, Sophia exclaimed. Honestly, Mom, it's about time. Do Miguel and Luis know about Christmas? No, I haven't told them yet. Well, I'm calling them right after we hang up. And I have a proposal for you. Why don't you come to Portland for Christmas? We have the guest room already, and the kids would be thrilled to have their abuela here for the holidays. David's parents are coming for Christmas Eve, but they leave Christmas morning for their cruise. It would be perfect. The invitation, so warm and genuine, brought fresh tears to my eyes. That sounds wonderful, Sophia. But are you sure it wouldn't be an imposition? An imposition, Mom, your family, real family. The kind that doesn't charge admission or require you to meet some social standard to be included. We want you here. The only question is whether you want to come. Did I want to go? The question gave me pause. Part of me still held out hope that Jason would reconsider, that he would realize the hurt his exclusion had caused and extend a proper invitation. But as I glanced again at my notepad with its stark columns of inequity, I knew that was magical thinking. I would love to come, I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. But I need to do something important first. After promising Sophia I would check flight options and call her back, I hung up and opened my laptop. It was time to send a long overdue email to Jason and Vanessa. I typed slowly, choosing my words with care. Dear Jason and Vanessa, after our conversation about Christmas, I've been reflecting on our relationship and the various financial arrangements we've established over the years. I want to inform you of some necessary changes moving forward. Effective immediately, I will no longer be making payments on your Mercedes SUV. The final payment I made was on November 30th. You will need to assume responsibility for the December payment and all future payments. Additionally, after this quarter, I will no longer be contributing to the children's school tuition. I've already sent the January payment, but you should make alternative arrangements beginning with the April term. These decisions are not made lightly or out of anger, but out of necessity for my own financial security as I age. The support I've provided was always intended to be temporary, and it's time for me to focus on ensuring my retirement funds remain adequate for my needs. I love you and the children deeply, and I hope we can maintain a relationship based on mutual respect and affection rather than financial dependence. Love. Mom, I read the message 3 times before finally pressing send, my heart pounding with a mixture of anxiety and liberation. Then I opened a new browser tab and began searching for flights to Portland. Christmas with Sophia's family would be a new experience, but perhaps it was exactly the fresh start I needed. What I didn't expect was how quickly Jason would respond, or how his reaction would confirm everything I had begun to suspect about our relationship. The response from Jason came less than 15 minutes after I sent my email, the fastest he had replied to any communication from me in months. My phone rang while I was still browsing flight options to Portland. Mom, what the hell is this email? No greeting, no preamble, just immediate anger. His voice had that tight, controlled quality it took on when he was furious, but trying to sound reasonable. Hello, Jason, I said calmly, my newfound resolve strengthening my voice. I think the email was very clear. Clear? You're unilaterally canceling financial commitments without any discussion. The car payment is already late. We got a notification from the lender this morning. Do you have any idea what this does to our credit score? Not, how are you feeling, or let's talk about Christmas, or even, can we discuss this? Just immediate concern about the financial impact and his credit score. I'm sorry about the late payment notification, I said, and I genuinely was. I hadn't intended to cause a missed payment, just to stop making them myself. But these aren't joint financial commitments, Jason. They're voluntary contributions I've been making to support your lifestyle, a lifestyle that increasingly doesn't include me. Is this about Christmas? He demanded. Are you punishing us because we want one holiday to ourselves? This isn't punishment, I replied, keeping my voice level despite the frustration building inside me. This is me making necessary changes to protect my financial future. And yes, being excluded from Christmas was clarifying for me. It helped me see that our relationship has become unbalanced. Unbalanced? He scoffed. We see you all the time. The kids adore you. So we need one Christmas to network with important clients. That's how business works, Mom? I thought you understood that. I understand business quite well, I countered. And in business, there's an expectation of reciprocity. I've contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to support your family over the years, with increasingly less acknowledgement or appreciation. So, now you're keeping score? I thought family didn't work that way. The irony of him invoking family, values while excluding me from a family holiday wasn't lost on me. Family shouldn't work that way, I agreed. But our relationship has evolved into something that feels transactional. I provide financial support, and in return, I receive occasional time with my grandchildren when it's convenient for you, and Vanessa. That's not fair, he protested, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. What's not fair is telling your mother she isn't welcome at Christmas, then expecting her to keep making luxury car payments. What's not fair is gradually reducing my role in your lives while increasing your financial expectations. There was silence on the line for a moment, then Jason's voice returned with a different tactic. Mom, I know retirement has been difficult for you, having less purpose, less to do each day. Maybe you're focusing too much on our relationship because you don't have enough else going on in your life. The condescension in his tone made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. This was classic Jason, deflecting responsibility by suggesting, the problem lay with the other person's perception. My life is quite fulfilling, thank you. I have friends, volunteer work, and 2 other children who value my presence, not just my checkbook. In fact, I'll be spending Christmas with Sophia and her family in Portland. Portland? He sounded genuinely surprised. You're going all the way to Oregon? Since when? Since this morning. Sophia called to ask about my Christmas plans, and when I told her I wasn't invited to yours, she immediately invited me to join them. You told Sophia we excluded you from Christmas? Now he sounded alarmed. Mom, that's going to create unnecessary family drama. Why would you do that? I told her the truth when she asked about my plans. Should I have lied to protect your image? Before Jason could respond, I heard Vanessa's voice in the background asking what was happening. There was a muffled exchange, and then Vanessa came on the line. Gloria, she said, her voice honey-sweet but with an underlying edge. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We never meant to make you feel excluded from our family. The Christmas arrangement is simply what works best with our networking obligations this year. There's no misunderstanding, Vanessa, I replied. Jason was very clear that I wasn't welcome for any part of Christmas Day. Well, that's not exactly, she began, but I continued. And the financial changes I've outlined aren't up for negotiation. They're necessary adjustments for my financial security. Her tone immediately cooled. I see. Well, perhaps we can discuss this in person. Why don't you come over for coffee tomorrow? We can talk through everything calmly and find a solution that works for everyone. I had fallen for this tactic before, Vanessa's preference for in-person discussions, where she could deploy her considerable charm and persuasive skills. She had majored in communications and worked briefly in public relations before deciding to become a full-time mother and social coordinator for Jason's business. She knew exactly how to manage people and conversations to get her desired outcome. I don't think that's necessary, I said firmly. My decision is final. I'll no longer be making payments on your car or contributing to the children's tuition, beyond what I've already committed to. You and Jason will need to adjust your finances accordingly. There was a pause. Then Vanessa's voice returned, all pretense of warmth gone. You know, Gloria, I've always told Jason that your generosity came with strings attached. You don't support us because you love us. You do it for control. This just proves I was right. The accusation stung, partly because it was such a profound inversion of reality. I had given freely for years, asking nothing in return except inclusion in their lives. Inclusion that had been increasingly restricted and now revoked entirely. If I wanted control, Vanessa, I would have established that long ago with formal loan agreements and repayment terms. Everything I've given has been from love, with no expectations beyond being treated with basic respect and included in family gatherings. Well, your timing is incredibly inconsiderate, she snapped. Right before Christmas, with the children's presents already purchased and our client dinner arranged. What are we supposed to do about the car payment that's already late? The question was so revealing, it almost made me laugh. After all my years of sacrifice, her immediate concern was still how my decision affected their convenience and finances, not why I felt compelled to make it. You have two options, I said calmly. You can adjust your budget to cover the payment yourselves, or you can downgrade to a more affordable vehicle. Either way, it's no longer my responsibility. I heard Jason's voice in the background again, and he returned to the phone. Mom, you can't just drop this on us without warning. The Mercedes is financed in my name. My credit will be ruined if we miss payments. You received the same notification I did this morning about the late payment, I pointed out. You have several days to make the payment before it affects your credit, and you and Vanessa together earn well over 6 figures. The fact that you can't afford your own car payments should tell you something about your financial choices. This is so typical, he muttered. You give with one hand and take away with the other when things don't go your way. His characterization was so unjust it momentarily left me speechless. When I found my voice again, it was steadier and more resolute than before. Jason, I have supported you financially since you were 12 years old. I worked multiple jobs to put you through college. I depleted my retirement savings to help you buy your home and start your business. I've made car payments and tuition payments and countless other contributions, all while you and Vanessa gradually reduced my role in your lives to that of an occasional visitor and convenient ATM. And now that I've set one boundary, after being told I'm not welcome at Christmas, you accuse me of manipulation? It's not that simple, he began, but I cut him off. Actually, it is that simple. I deserve to be treated with respect. I deserve to be included in family celebrations. And I deserve to retire with financial security instead of bankrupting myself to maintain your lifestyle. So that's it? You're just cutting us off completely? His voice had taken on a sullen, victimized tone I recognized from his teenage years. I'm adjusting my financial contributions to a sustainable level. I'll still give the children birthday and Christmas gifts. I'll still be their grandmother. But I won't continue making your car payments or tuition payments. Those responsibilities return to where they belong, with the children's parents. After we hung up, I sat motionless for several minutes, absorbing what had just transpired. The conversation had confirmed my worst suspicions. In Jason and Vanessa's eyes, my primary value lay in the financial support I provided. Now that I had withdrawn that support, I was immediately cast as manipulative, controlling, and unreasonable. The pattern was so clear now. Each time I had increased my financial contributions, their expectations had grown while my place in their lives had diminished. The more I gave, the less I received. Not just in terms of gratitude, but in basic respect and inclusion. My phone began to buzz with text messages, first from Jason, then from Vanessa. I set it aside without reading them. Instead, I returned to my laptop and booked a flight to Portland for December 23rd, returning January 3rd. Then I called Sophia to give her the good news. What I didn't realize then was that my decision to withdraw financial support would reveal aspects of Jason and Vanessa's lives that they had carefully kept hidden from me. Revelations that would make my Christmas exclusion seem minor by comparison. The next morning, I awoke to 7 missed calls and 16 text messages, all from either Jason or Vanessa. I skimmed through them quickly, noting the emotional progression, from anger to guilt-tripping to desperate appeals. The final message, sent at 1:37 a.m., caught my attention. Mom, please call us first thing tomorrow. This is more serious than you. No, the car payment is just the beginning of our problems. We need your help. My immediate instinct was concern. Was someone ill? Had something happened to one of the children? But as I reflected on the pattern of manipulation I'd recognized the day before, I approached the message with newfound caution. Instead of calling immediately, I went about my morning routine. Coffee, stretching exercises, a light breakfast. Only then, feeling centered and calm, did I return Jason's call. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, finally. We've been trying to reach you since yesterday." "I needed time to process our conversation," I replied simply. "Your message mentioned problems beyond the car payment. Is everyone healthy? Are the children all right?" "The kids are fine," he assured me quickly. "This is financial. We need to talk in person. Can you come over this morning?" The request set off warning bells. "I'd prefer to discuss it over the phone first." He sighed heavily. "Mom, we're in trouble. Serious trouble. The car payment isn't just a matter of redirecting some funds in our budget. We're overextended. Significantly." "What does significantly mean, Jason?" I asked, bracing myself. "We're 3 months behind on our mortgage. The kitchen renovation went way over budget. There are credit card balances." He trailed off. "How much credit card debt exactly?" Another heavy sigh. "About 90,000. I nearly dropped the phone. $90,000? Jason, how is that possible? Your combined income is substantial. It's complicated," he hedged. "Look, could you just come over? Vanessa has all the figures. We can show you everything and discuss options." Options. I knew precisely what that meant. They wanted me to bail them out again, on an even larger scale than before. "I'll come at 11, I agreed, wanting to understand the full scope of the situation. "But Jason, I need to be absolutely clear. I cannot solve major financial problems for you. Whatever assistance I might offer will be limited and conditional." "Of course," he said quickly, though his tone lacked conviction. "We just need your financial expertise. You've always been so good with money management." The irony of that statement, given how they had depleted my savings to fund their lifestyle, wasn't lost on me. I arrived at their home at precisely 11, noting the immaculate landscaping and the luxury vehicles in the driveway. Not just the Mercedes SUV I had been paying for, but also a sleek sports car I'd never seen before. Vanessa greeted me at the door, her usual polished appearance slightly dimmed. Her designer outfit was as impeccable as ever, but the strain showed around her eyes and in the tightness of her smile. "Gloria, thank you for coming," she said, leading me into their formal living room where Jason waited with a folder of documents. "Would you like coffee? Tea?" "No, thank you," I replied, taking a seat across from my son. "I think we should get straight to the point." Jason nodded, opening the folder and spreading several papers on the coffee table between us. "So here's where we stand. The mortgage is $4,800 monthly, and we're 3 payments behind. The Mercedes payment you've been handling is $1,285. The private school tuition is $9,000 per quarter for all 3 children. Then there are the credit cards." He handed me a stack of statements, and I began reviewing them with mounting disbelief. The balances weren't just high, they were catastrophic. Multiple cards maxed out, minimum payments barely covering the interest, charges for extravagant restaurants, designer clothing, exclusive clubs, and, most surprisingly, significant cash advances. "What are all these cash withdrawals for?" I asked, pointing to several transactions ranging from $2,000 to $5,000 each. Jason and Vanessa exchanged a quick glance. "Business development," Jason said vaguely. "Sometimes clients prefer cash transactions for certain arrangements." That explanation raised more questions than it answered, but I continued reviewing the documents. What emerged was a picture of financial disaster far worse than I had imagined. They weren't just overextended, they were on the verge of complete collapse, with nearly $450,000 in unsecured debt beyond their mortgage. "Jason, Vanessa," I said finally, looking up from the papers. "How did it get to this point? This level of debt doesn't accumulate overnight." "The business took longer to become profitable than we anticipated," Jason began, But Vanessa interrupted. Let's be honest, Jason. She turned to me with an expression that attempted contrition, but didn't quite achieve it. We've been trying to maintain an image that supports Jason's business growth. In our circles, perception is reality. The right address, the right car, the right schools, the right vacation destinations, they all signal success, which attracts success. But none of it is real, I pointed out. You're one missed payment away from losing it all. Which is why we need your help, Jason said, leaning forward earnestly. Mom, we've calculated that with a loan of $175,000, we could consolidate the most pressing debts, catch up on the mortgage, and stabilize our situation. Once we're back on solid ground, the firm has several major projects lined up that will turn everything around. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. The amount was staggering, more than my remaining retirement savings. And the casual way he requested it, as if asking to borrow a cup of sugar, was almost as shocking as the figure itself. Jason, I said slowly, I don't have that kind of money available. But your investments, he pressed, your retirement accounts, and you still have equity in your condo. This would just be temporary, a bridge to get us through this rough patch. A bridge to bankruptcy for me, I replied, my voice steady despite my inner turmoil. Even if I liquidated everything, I couldn't give you that much. And if I did, what would I live on? You could move in with us, Vanessa suggested, as if offering a generous solution. The guest room is hardly used. It would reduce your expenses and you could spend more time with the children. The proposal was so tone-deaf it was almost comical. Less than 48 hours after being told I wasn't welcome for Christmas, I was being invited to surrender my home and independence to move into their guest room, all so they could maintain their facade of prosperity. That won't be possible, I said firmly. I value my independence and, frankly, our relationship isn't stable enough for that arrangement. Then what about a partial solution? Jason suggested quickly. Whatever you can manage. 50,000? 100, just to address the most critical issues. I looked at my son, my bright, talented son who had once shown such promise and integrity, and felt an overwhelming sadness. Somewhere along the way, he had lost himself in this quest for status and external validation, and I had enabled it every step of the way. Jason, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer, I said, meeting his eyes directly. If I hadn't canceled the car payment, would you have told me about any of this? He hesitated, glancing at Vanessa. We were planning to discuss it after the holidays, he said eventually. We didn't want to burden you with this during Christmas. But you were fine with excluding me from Christmas while expecting me to continue making payments on a luxury vehicle you can't afford, I observed. Do you see the disconnect there? Jason had the grace to look ashamed, but Vanessa jumped in defensively. The Christmas decision was about professional networking, not personal exclusion. And we appreciate everything you've done, Gloria. We truly do. But surely you understand that family helps family in times of crisis. Yes, I agreed. Family does help family. But healthy help doesn't enable self-destructive patterns or come at the expense of the helper's well-being. What you're asking would devastate my financial security for the rest of my life. So you're saying no? Jason's voice had a hard edge now. After everything we've included you in over the years, all the time with the grandchildren, you're just going to abandon us when we need you most? The manipulation was so transparent it strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. I'm not abandoning you. I'm declining to sacrifice my financial security to temporarily mask problems that will recur if the underlying behaviors don't change. I gestured to the pile of credit card statements. This isn't a one-time emergency, Jason. This is a lifestyle built on unsustainable borrowing and appearance maintenance. Easy for you to say, Vanessa muttered. You have no idea the pressure we're under to maintain the right image for the business. Actually, I understand business quite well, I replied calmly. And no successful business is built on deception and debt. If your lifestyle is destroying your finances, the solution isn't more borrowing. It's adjusting your lifestyle. I stood up, gathering my purse. I can't give you the large sum you're asking for. What I can offer is this. I'll provide $7,500 to bring your mortgage current, but only if you agree to meet with a financial counselor and develop a realistic budget. And that budget needs to include taking over the car payments yourselves. Jason looked as if I had offered to throw a glass of water on a house fire. That's nothing compared to what we need. It's all I can responsibly give, I said, firmly. The rest will require difficult decisions on your part. Decisions I should have insisted you make long ago instead of enabling unsustainable habits. As I moved toward the door, Vanessa called after me, her voice sharp with desperation and anger. So this is how you show your love? By deserting us right before Christmas? What kind of grandmother does that? I turned back, meeting her gaze steadily. The kind who loves her family enough to stop enabling harmful patterns, even when it's painful for everyone involved. The kind who finally recognizes that real love sometimes means saying no. Walking to my car, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness for the relationship damage, guilt over whether I should have seen them behind problems sooner, but also a growing sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I had put my own well-being first, establishing a boundary that protected my future while offering reasonable, constructive help. I had no way of knowing then that my modest offer of assistance with conditions attached would trigger a series of revelations far more shocking than credit card debt. Revelations that would make me realize how little I truly knew about my son's life and business. The morning after my difficult conversation with Jason and Vanessa, I sat at my kitchen table with my sister Teresa's homemade coffee cake and a sense of uneasy resolution. I had done the right thing by refusing to deplete my savings, but the strain in Jason's voice and the genuine panic beneath Vanessa's polished exterior suggested that their financial situation was even more precarious than they had revealed. My phone rang, displaying a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would let unknown calls go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. "Is this Gloria Martinez?" a man's professional voice inquired. "Yes, speaking." "Mrs. Martinez, my name is Andrew Kelly, with Security First Bank. I'm calling regarding a loan application that lists you as a co-signer." I frowned, immediately alert. "I haven't co-signed any loans recently." There was a brief pause. The application was submitted yesterday afternoon by a Jason Martinez and Vanessa Martinez for a home equity line of credit in the amount of $200,000. Your name, social security number, and financial information are included as co-signer. My blood ran cold. "I never authorized that. I haven't signed anything." "I see," the banker said, his tone shifting slightly. "In that case, Mrs. Martinez, I strongly recommend you check your credit report immediately and consider placing a fraud alert. This application includes detailed financial information that would typically only be available to you or someone with access to your personal documents." After thanking him and ending the call, I sat in stunned silence. Had my son and daughter-in-law actually attempted to fraudulently use my information to secure a loan after I had explicitly refused to help? The thought was so disturbing I initially rejected it. There must be some misunderstanding. With shaking hands, I called Jason's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried their home number. No answer. I sent a text. "I just received a call from Security First Bank about a loan application with my name on it. Call me immediately." While waiting for a response, I logged into my credit monitoring service. Sure enough, there was a recent inquiry from Security First Bank. More disturbing, there were 3 other inquiries from different financial institutions over the past 2 months. Inquiries I had never authorized. My sigh. Doorbell rang, startling me from these troubling discoveries. Through the peephole, I saw Miguel, my youngest son, standing on my doorstep. We hadn't arranged a visit. His appearance was unexpected, but welcome. "Miguel," I exclaimed, opening the door. What a lovely surprise. His expression was serious, his usual easy smile absent. Mom, we need to talk. Can I come in? Something in his tone filled me with dread. I led him to the living room, where he declined my offer of coffee or cake. Sophia called me yesterday, he began without preamble. She told me about Jason excluding you from Christmas and your decision to stop the car payments. I nodded. It's been a difficult few days. There's more you need to know, Miguel said, his voice gentle but firm. Luis and I have been worried about Jason for some time, but we didn't want to upset you without concrete evidence. After Sophia called, we decided you need to know everything. Know what, exactly? I asked, my earlier dread intensifying. Miguel took a deep breath. Jason's firm is under investigation by the state licensing board and potentially by federal authorities. There are allegations of code violations, falsified permits, and kickback schemes. The room seemed to tilt slightly. That can't be right. Jason wouldn't… Mom, Miguel interrupted softly. Luis's cousin works for the county building department. He's seen the case files. It's serious. Several of Jason's projects failed safety inspections after he claimed they were up to code, and there's evidence he's been paying off inspectors to overlook violations. I shook my head in disbelief. There must be some mistake. Jason is ambitious, yes, and perhaps too focused on appearances, but he wouldn't risk people's safety or break the law. I wish that were true, Miguel said. But there's more. Luis and I hired a private investigator 3 months ago after Jason asked to borrow $25,000 from us for what he called temporary business expenses. We were concerned about his increasingly erratic behavior and obvious financial strain despite his apparent success. He pulled out his phone and showed me photos. Jason entering a casino. Jason at a private poker game in what looked like an exclusive club. Jason arguing with a man inside an alley behind what appeared to be a pawn shop. Your son has a gambling problem, Mom, Miguel said gently. A serious one. The investigator estimates he's losing between $20,000 and $30,000 monthly. Those cash advances on the credit cards? They're not for business development. They're for gambling debts. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Suddenly, many puzzling aspects of Jason and Vanessa's behavior came into clearer focus. The desperate need for cash, the mounting debt despite their substantial income, their increasingly frantic attempts to maintain appearances while their financial foundation crumbled. Does Vanessa know? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We think so, Miguel replied. The investigator observed several heated arguments between them outside the casino. She appears to be trying to manage the situation, covering for him socially while attempting to mitigate the financial damage. That may explain her increasing hostility toward you. You represent both a financial safety net they desperately need and a potential witness to their unraveling facade. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this devastating information. My son, my bright, promising son, was not just financially irresponsible, but potentially criminally liable. And I had been unknowingly funding not just a lavish lifestyle, but possibly a destructive addiction. There's something else you should know, Miguel continued reluctantly. The investigator discovered that Jason has accessed your financial information multiple times. He has copies of your investment statements, bank records, even your social security card. The bank call suddenly made terrifying sense. Security First Bank contacted me this morning about a loan application with my name on it that I never authorized. Miguel's expression darkened. That's identity theft, Mom. Even if he's your son, it's a serious crime. What should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of the situation. First, you need to protect yourself financially, Miguel said firmly. Call all the credit bureaus and place a freeze on your credit. Contact every financial institution where you have accounts and add extra security measures, and change all your passwords, email, banking, everything. I nodded numbly, trying to focus on these practical steps, rather than the emotional devastation of realizing my son had attempted to steal my identity. Then, Miguel continued, we need to consider whether to confront Jason directly or involve authorities. Identity theft and fraud are serious crimes, but he's still your son and potentially facing other legal troubles. The doorbell rang again, interrupting our conversation. Miguel went to check while I remained seated, still reeling from his revelations. He returned looking grim. It's Jason and Vanessa. My heart raced. I'm not sure I'm ready to face them right now. You don't have to, Miguel assured me. I can ask them to leave. But even as he spoke, Jason's voice called from the entryway. Mom, we need to talk to you. It's important. I took a deep breath, gathering my strength. Let them in, Miguel. This can't wait. Jason and Vanessa entered my living room, both stopping, short when they saw Miguel. Something like fear flickered across Jason's face before he composed himself. Miguel. Didn't expect to see you here, he said, his tone artificially casual. Clearly, my youngest son replied coolly. Vanessa glanced, nervously between them, then focused on me with an attempt at her usual charm. Gloria, thank you for seeing us. We wanted to discuss that misunderstanding with the bank. There's a simple explanation. Stop, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Before you construct another lie, you should know that I'm aware of everything. The gambling, the financial deception, the attempted identity theft, and the professional misconduct investigation. All of it. The color drained from Jason's face. Vanessa's perfect composure cracked completely, her expression cycling rapidly from shock to calculation to something like defeat. Mom, Jason began, his voice breaking. I can explain. Can you explain forging my signature on a loan application? I asked quietly. Can you explain stealing my financial information? Or using my retirement to fund casino visits while excluding me from your family's Christmas? The confrontation I had dreaded was now unavoidable, and with it would come decisions that would permanently alter the course of our family relationships. Decisions no mother should ever have to make. The silence that followed my confrontation seemed to stretch endlessly. Jason stood frozen, his mouth slightly open as if words had failed him completely. Beside him, Vanessa's perfect facade had crumbled, revealing something I had never seen before: raw panic. Miguel moved protectively closer to me, his presence a silent reminder that I wasn't facing this alone. How did you? Jason finally began, then stopped, recalibrating. Whatever you think you know, it's not the whole story. Then tell me the whole story, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Explain why you tried to take out a loan, in my name without my knowledge or consent. Jason glanced at Vanessa, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. We were desperate, he admitted, his shoulders slumping. After you refused to help yesterday, we didn't know where else to turn. The mortgage company is starting foreclosure proceedings next week. We have creditors calling constantly. And there are people I owe money to who aren't as patient as traditional lenders. Loan sharks? Miguel asked sharply. Jason winced. Not exactly, just private lenders with strict terms. Gambling debts, I stated flatly, not a question but a confirmation. My son's eyes widened. How did you? That's not important, I interrupted. What matters is that you were willing to commit fraud, to steal from your own mother, rather than face the consequences of your actions honestly. We never intended to actually go through with it, Vanessa interjected quickly. It was just to see if approval was possible. We would have come to you before finalizing anything. The practiced smoothness of her lie was chilling. I wondered how many times she had covered for Jason with similar fabrications, managing their increasingly precarious house of cards. The bank called me directly to verify the application because something seemed suspicious, I said. They specifically mentioned that my personal financial information was included. Information I never shared with you. Jason's gaze dropped to the floor. In that moment, he looked less like the confident, successful architect he pretended to be, and more like the 12-year-old boy who had once tearfully confessed to breaking a neighbor's window with an errant baseball. "I accessed your financial records," he admitted quietly. "You left your password book in your desk drawer when you helped us with tax preparation last year. I took photos of it. The deliberate violation of my privacy, planned, premeditated, sent a wave of nausea through me. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was calculated exploitation." "And the credit inquiries from other banks over the past 2 months?" I asked. "Were those also just to see if approval was possible?" Vanessa paled further, throwing a sharp glance at Jason. Clearly, she hadn't known about those earlier attempts. "You've been doing this for months?" she hissed at him. "You told me this was a one-time emergency measure." Their unified front collapsed instantly. Jason turned to her, desperation evident in his voice. "What was I supposed to do? Your father cut us off after he found out about Atlantic City? The business is under investigation, and you refuse to consider selling the house or the cars. Because selling would be admitting failure," she shot back. "My entire family would know immediately. Do you have any idea what that would do to my relationship with my parents? To the children standing at Westridge Academy?" As they turned on each other, revealing layer after layer of deception, I felt a curious detachment, as if I were watching strangers argue about problems that had nothing to do with me. In a way, these people were strangers. Their values, priorities, and moral boundaries completely foreign to the family I thought I knew. "Enough," I said finally, my quiet voice somehow cutting through their heated exchange. "This stops now." They both turned to me, momentarily united again in apprehension. "I won't be pressing charges for the identity theft and fraud attempt," I said, having made the decision in that moment. "Not because you deserve that mercy, but because I don't want your children to see their father arrested or their family name in the headlines." Relief flashed across their faces, but I continued before they could speak. "However, I am implementing immediate measures to protect myself. Miguel will accompany me to the bank this afternoon to place a security freeze on my credit and change all my accounts. I'll be filing formal documentation about this attempted fraud with my financial institutions to prevent any future attempts." Jason started to protest, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. From this moment forward, I will provide no financial support of any kind to either of you. Not a dollar, not a loan, not a co-signature, nothing. But the children," Vanessa began. "My grandchildren will always receive my love and appropriate gifts for birthdays and holidays," I clarified. "But their private school tuition, extracurricular activities, and other expenses are solely your responsibility as their parents." I turned directly to Jason, meeting his eyes fully. "You need professional help for your gambling addiction. And you both need financial counseling to address the unsustainable lifestyle you've created. We can't just—" Jason started. "You can and you will," I interrupted firmly. "Because you've run out of alternatives. Your credit is maxed out. Your family members won't bail you out. And attempting fraud has closed the door on my financial support permanently." The finality in my voice seemed to penetrate at last. Jason sank onto my sofa, his head in his hands. Vanessa remained standing, her perfect posture intact, even as her world collapsed around her. "What about Christmas?" she asked, and I nearly laughed at the absurdity of her concern in the midst of this crisis. "What about it?" I replied. "The children are expecting their grandmother to be there," she said, her tone suggesting she was conferring a great honor. "Despite our disagreement, we can set that aside for the children's sake." The calculation was transparent. With their financial situation exposed and my support withdrawn, I was suddenly welcome at Christmas again. Not because they valued my presence, but because excluding me now might jeopardize any potential financial reconciliation in the future. "I'll be Spending Christmas in Portland with Sophia and her family, I said. I've already purchased my ticket. For the first time, genuine emotion crossed Vanessa's face. Not concern for my feelings, but alarm at the realization that her in-laws would now know everything. You told Sophia about all this? She asked, gesture encompassing the financial disaster, the gambling, the fraud attempt. She knows about my exclusion from Christmas and my decision regarding the car payments, I clarified. She doesn't yet know about the attempted identity theft or Jason's gambling addiction. That information is yours to share, or not, as you see fit. I stood, signaling that our conversation was concluding. I love you, Jason. Despite everything, you're my son. But love doesn't mean enabling destructive behaviors or allowing myself to be exploited. Whatever path you choose moving forward, whether that's getting help and rebuilding your life honestly or continuing down this road of deception, you'll do it without financial support from me. The clarity of this boundary, firmly established and non-negotiable, filled me with unexpected strength. For years, I had confused financial assistance with maternal love, believing that supporting Jason materially was my primary value as a mother. Now, I understood that the most loving thing I could do was to stop shielding him from the consequences of his choices. What are we supposed to do now? Jason asked, his voice small and defeated. You make hard choices, Miguel answered before I could respond. You sell the house you can't afford. You trade in the luxury cars for practical transportation. You withdraw the kids from private school. You get treatment for your gambling addiction. You face the professional misconduct allegations honestly and accept whatever consequences come. But that would be... Vanessa couldn't seem to finish the sentence. Humbling? I suggested. Yes, it would be. But humility is the beginning of wisdom, and it's long overdue for both of you. As they left my condo a few minutes later, Jason paused at the door. I'm sorry, Mom, he said quietly, for everything. I wanted to believe his apology was genuine, that this crisis had triggered a true awakening. But I had enabled his behavior for too long to trust sudden transformations. Prove it with actions, not words, I replied gently. That's all I ask. After they left, Miguel stayed with me, helping me make immediate calls to credit bureaus and banks. By evening, my financial accounts were secured with new passwords, additional authentication measures, and fraud alerts. My credit was frozen at all 3 major bureaus, preventing any new accounts from being opened in my name. As Miguel prepared to leave, he hugged me tightly. I'm proud of you, Mom. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, but it was necessary, for Jason as much as for me. That night, alone in my condo, I experienced a curious mixture of grief and liberation. I grieved for the relationship I had thought I had with my son, for the grandchildren who would inevitably feel the aftershocks of their parents' financial reckoning, for the years I had spent enabling behavior that had ultimately harmed everyone involved. But beneath that, grief ran a current of something new and unfamiliar: freedom. Freedom from the constant drain on my resources. Freedom from manipulation disguised as familial obligation. Freedom to prioritize my own well-being without guilt or apology. As I packed for my trip to Portland, I realized I was embarking on more than just a Christmas visit. I was beginning a new chapter of my life, one where my value wasn't measured by what I could provide financially, but by the wisdom, boundaries, and genuine love I could offer. What I didn't yet know was that the most difficult test of these new boundaries was still to come, in the form of an unexpected Christmas Eve visitor who would force me to choose between my newfound resolve and the most primal instinct of any mother, protecting her child from harm. 2 days before my scheduled flight to Portland, I was finalizing my holiday preparations. I had wrapped small gifts for Sophia's children, packed my suitcase with clothes appropriate for Oregon's damp winter, and prepared my condo for a 2-week absence. The emotional turmoil of the past week had settled into a dull ache, still present, but manageable. My doorbell rang at 9:17 p.m., an unusual hour for visitors. Looking through the peephole, I was startled to see Emma, my 11-year-old granddaughter, standing alone on my doorstep, clutching a small backpack. I flung the door open. "Emma! Sweetheart, what are you doing here? Where are your parents?" Her face was tear-streaked, her normally neat appearance disheveled. "Grandma, can I come in?" I ushered her inside immediately, alarmed by her obvious distress. "Of course. Are you hungry? Thirsty? Do your parents know you're here?" She shook her head to the last question, sinking onto my sofa. "I took the bus. No one saw me leave." "The bus?" I repeated, horrified at the thought of my young granddaughter traveling alone at night. "Emma, that's not safe. Your parents must be worried sick. I need to call them right away." "Please don't," she begged, fresh tears welling. "Not yet. They're fighting again. They've been fighting for days, ever since you stopped paying for stuff. Dad keeps yelling about money and Mom keeps crying and saying it's all falling apart." I sat beside her, putting my arm around her slender shoulders. "I'm so sorry you've been hearing those arguments. Adult problems shouldn't be your burden." "Last night, Dad smashed a glass against the wall," she continued, her voice small. "And this afternoon, some men came to the door with papers. Mom cried for hours after they left. Then Lucas heard Dad on the phone saying something about having to pull us out of Westridge Academy after Christmas break." Each revelation pierced my heart. Despite my resolve to let Jason and Vanessa face the consequences of their actions, I had never wanted my grandchildren to suffer. "The worst part happened tonight," Emma said, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "Mom and Dad were arguing in their bedroom, but I could hear them. Mom said they should send us to stay with her parents while they sort things out. Dad said no, that Grandpa Whitmore would just use it as another opportunity to control him. Then Mom said maybe they should separate until Dad gets his problem under control." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Your parents are going through a difficult time right now. Sometimes adults say things when they're upset that they don't really mean." "Are they getting divorced?" Emma asked, bluntly. "Like Isabel's parents?" "I don't know, sweetheart," I answered honestly. "That's a decision only they can make. But no matter what happens between your mom and dad, they both love you and your brothers very much." I got her a glass of water and some cookies while gently extracting more information. She had planned her escape carefully, waiting until both parents were distracted by their argument before slipping out with a backpack containing pajamas, her favorite stuffed animal, and her toothbrush. She had used her emergency phone money to take the bus across town to my condo. "I remembered the route from when we used to visit you more often," she explained, with a child's simple logic that made my heart ache. As she calmed down, I knew I couldn't delay any longer. "Emma, I need to call your parents now. They must be frantic looking for you." Her face fell, but she nodded reluctantly. "Are you going to make me go back tonight?" "Let me talk to them first," I said, stepping into the kitchen to make the call. Jason answered on the first ring, his voice tight with panic. "Mom, have you seen Emma? She's missing. We've called the police. We're searching the neighborhood." "She's here with me, Jason," I interrupted. "She's safe. She took the bus." His relief was audible. "Thank God. We've been out of our minds. I'll come get her right away." "Before you do," I said carefully, "you should know she's very upset. She's heard your arguments with Vanessa. She knows about the financial problems, the men delivering papers, and the possibility of changing schools. She even overheard Vanessa suggesting separation." Silence followed, then a muffled sound that might have been a suppressed sob. "I never wanted her to know any of that," he finally said, his voice breaking. "We tried to shield the kids from what's happening." Children are perceptive, Jason. They sense when things are wrong, even when we don't tell them directly. I paused, then continued gently. "It's late and Emma is exhausted. Would you consider letting her stay with me tonight? I'll bring her home first thing in the morning, and you can all talk then when everyone is calmer." He hesitated, then agreed. "Maybe that's best. Can I talk to her?" I brought the phone to Emma, who had a brief, tearful conversation with her father, assuring him she was fine and would see him tomorrow. When she handed the phone back, I could hear the relief in her voice. "He's not mad at me for leaving." "Of course not," I said, smoothing her hair. "He was just worried." Later, after I had settled Emma in my guest room with fresh pajamas, she had forgotten to pack any, and extra hugs, I sat at my kitchen table contemplating this unexpected development. My granddaughter's flight to my home had complicated the clean break I had been attempting to make, the clear boundaries I had established with Jason and Vanessa. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Thank you for taking care of Emma. This situation is more difficult than you know. Can we talk privately when you bring her home tomorrow?" The message was notably devoid of her usual defensiveness. No accusations, no manipulation, just simple gratitude and a request for conversation. Something had shifted. I replied, "Emma is asleep now. We'll bring her home around 9 a.m. Happy to talk." Then, the next morning, Emma seemed calmer after a good night's sleep, though still apprehensive about returning home. Over breakfast, she confided additional worries. "Grandma, are you really not coming for Christmas? Lucas and Max were so excited about the presents you always bring." "I'll be visiting Aunt Sophia in Portland," I explained gently. "But I've already wrapped presents for all of you. I was planning to drop them off before my trip." "It won't be the same," she said mournfully. "You always make the special Mexican hot chocolate on Christmas morning, and you tell the best stories about when Dad was little." Her innocent lament highlighted another cost of the boundaries I had established: the impact on my grandchildren, who understood nothing of the adult conflicts surrounding them. "I have an idea," I said, struck by sudden inspiration. "What if I show you how to make the special hot chocolate? You're certainly old enough to learn. That way, you can have it on Christmas morning even when I'm not there." Her face brightened immediately. "Could I really? Dad says I make the best cinnamon toast in the family already." We spent the next hour in the kitchen, with Emma carefully, measuring ingredients and practicing the technique for creating the perfect froth. Her pride in mastering this small family tradition was evident, and I found myself treasuring these moments even as I prepared to return her to a household in turmoil. When we arrived at Jason and Vanessa's home, the first thing I noticed was the absence of the luxury sports car in the driveway. Only the Mercedes SUV remained, its glossy exterior now sporting a layer of dust that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. Emma ran inside ahead of me, calling for her brothers. Jason met me at the door, looking haggard and noticeably thinner than when I'd seen him last. The pristine house showed subtle signs of neglect: mail piled on a side table, a light layer of dust on the furniture. "Thank you for taking care of her," he said quietly, "and for not alerting the police that she was with you. They called off the search once we knew she was safe." "Of course," I replied. "She was never in danger, just upset and confused." "Where's Vanessa? She wanted to speak with me." "In the study," he said, gesturing down the hall. We're trying to figure things out." I found Vanessa seated at the desk, surrounded by papers and a calculator. Her appearance was startlingly different. No designer outfit, no perfect makeup, just jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked up when I entered, and I was struck by the change in her eyes. The calculating coolness replaced by something more vulnerable, more human. "Gloria," she said, standing. "Thank you for coming, and for taking care of Emma last night." "She's a wonderful girl," I replied. "Very resourceful, though I wish she hadn't traveled. Alone at night?" Vanessa nodded, gesturing for me to sit in the chair opposite the desk. "I wanted to speak with you privately because things have changed, are changing." She picked up a document from the desk and handed it to me. It was a listing agreement with a real estate agency, signed that morning. "We're selling the house," she said simply. "We can't afford it anymore, especially with the mortgage 3 months behind." I glanced at the paper, noting that the asking price was reasonable, not the inflated value I might have expected from their previous approach to finances. "The Mercedes goes on the market next week," she continued, "and I've already contacted Westridge Academy to withdraw the children after this term. The public school in the district where we're looking at rentals has a good reputation." The magnitude of these changes, this surrender of the external trappings that had been so central to their identity, was stunning. "This must be difficult. For you?" I said carefully. "It's humiliating," she admitted with surprising candor. "Everything I've spent years building, our social position, the children's educational advantages, our standing in the community, it's all collapsing. My parents are—" She trailed off, then continued more softly. "My father has made it clear that he won't bail us out again. His exact words were that we need to learn to live within reality instead of fantasy." I waited, sensing there was more she wanted to say. "Jason has his first Gamblers Anonymous meeting tomorrow," she continued after a moment. "He's agreed to therapy as well, both for the addiction and for us, our marriage." She looked down at her hands. "I don't know if we'll survive this as a couple. There's been too much deception, too many lies. But we're trying to handle it as constructively as possible for the children's sake." She met my eyes directly. "I owe you an apology, Gloria. A significant one. The way we've treated you, the way I've treated you, has been inexcusable. Taking advantage of your generosity while gradually excluding you from our lives. It was wrong. Deeply wrong." The apology, so unexpected and apparently genuine, caught me off guard. Before I could respond, she continued, "I'm not asking for financial help. You've been clear about those boundaries, and they're appropriate. But I am asking, for the children's sake, if you might reconsider your Christmas plans. They need stability right now, some sense that not everything in their world is changing. Your presence would provide that." Her request presented me with a dilemma I hadn't anticipated, one that would require me to weigh my commitment to Sophia against the immediate needs of my grandchildren in crisis. I left Jason and Vanessa's house, with Vanessa's request weighing heavily on my mind. The children did need stability. Emma's midnight journey to my condo had made that heartbreakingly clear. But I had made a commitment to Sophia, who had immediately welcomed me into her Christmas plans when she learned of my exclusion. As I drove home, I called Sophia to explain the situation and seek her advice. "So they want you to cancel your trip to us now that they need you?" Sophia asked, understandable skepticism in her voice. "After specifically uninviting you?" "It's more complicated than that," I admitted. "They're making genuine changes, selling the house, giving up the luxury cars, withdrawing the children from private school. Jason is getting help for his gambling addiction, and the children are struggling with all the upheaval." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "Do you believe they're sincere this time? Or is this another manipulation?" It was the question I'd been asking myself since leaving their house. The changes they're making are too substantial to be merely for show. And Vanessa's apology seemed genuine. Perhaps the first truly authentic interaction I've had with her in years. "What do you want to do, Mom?" Sophia asked finally. "We'd love to have you here, but we'll understand if your grandchildren in crisis take precedence." Her generosity brought tears to my eyes. "Could we possibly compromise? What if I spend Christmas Eve and morning with Jason's family, then fly to Portland in the afternoon for the remainder of the holiday week?" "That sounds perfect," Sophia said warmly. "The kids will still be excited to have their abuela here, even if it's a day later than planned. And I think it's the right choice. Those children need you right now." After changing my flight arrangements, I called Jason to let him know my decision. His relief was palpable. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know we don't deserve your kindness after how we've treated you." "This isn't about deserving," I replied. "It's about what your children need during a difficult time." "But Jason, my boundaries regarding financial support haven't changed. I won't be contributing to housing costs, car payments, or school tuition moving forward." "I understand," he said quietly. "And I respect that. We're learning to live within our actual means for the first time in years. It's humbling, but necessary." Christmas Eve arrived crisp and clear, with just enough chill in the air to feel festive in our Southern California climate. I arrived at Jason and Vanessa's house in the early afternoon, arms laden with modestly wrapped gifts for the children. The changes in the home were immediately apparent. Several rooms had been partially packed, with labeled boxes stacked neatly against walls. The formal living room, once showcasing expensive artwork and designer furniture, now held only essential pieces, with conspicuous empty spaces where items had been sold. The children greeted me with exuberance, especially Emma, who proudly announced that she had prepared all the ingredients for our special Mexican hot chocolate the next morning. Lucas and Max showed me the homemade ornaments they had created for the simple tree that now stood in the family room, a stark contrast to the professionally decorated showpiece that had graced their formal living room in previous years. Vanessa's transformation was perhaps the most striking. Gone was the perfectly coiffed society wife who had once deemed me not prestigious enough for her holiday table. In her place was a woman in jeans and a simple sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail, who greeted me with a genuine hug and ushered me into a kitchen where she was actually cooking dinner herself, rather than arranging catered food on expensive platters. "It's nothing fancy," she said, a hint of embarrassment coloring her voice as she gestured to the lasagna she was preparing. "I'm relearning how to cook. My mother's housekeeper used to make this for us when I was growing up. It was always my favorite." "It smells wonderful," I assured her, offering to help with the salad. As we worked side by side in the kitchen, something that had never happened in all the years of our relationship, Vanessa spoke with unexpected openness. "I grew up believing that appearances were everything," she confessed. "My father measured success entirely by external validation. The right address, the right schools, the right social connections. I never questioned it until now when I've been forced to confront how hollow that foundation really is. What matters is being seen for who you truly are," I offered gently. "Not for what you own or what circles you move in." "I'm beginning to understand that," she said, meeting my eyes with newfound humility, though I wish it hadn't taken financial ruin to teach me the lesson. Jason joined us later, returning from his second Gamblers Anonymous meeting. There was a subdued quality to him, the brash confidence replaced by something more thoughtful, more authentic. Over dinner, he spoke candidly with the children about the changes coming to their lives. "We'll be moving to a smaller house after the new year," he explained. "And you'll be starting at a new school. It's going to be an adjustment for all of us, but we'll face it together as a family." "Will we still see Grandma?" Max asked, his 7-year-old face serious with concern. "More often, I hope," Jason replied, glancing at me. "If she's willing." Later, after the children were in bed, Jason, Vanessa, and I sat in their family room, the only light coming from the simple Christmas tree adorned with homemade ornaments. The pretense and performance that had characterized our previous interactions was noticeably absent. In its place was something raw and real. 3 adults facing difficult truths together. "We've made so many mistakes," Jason said quietly. "My gambling, our financial irresponsibility, how we treated you. I don't know if we can ever fully make amends." "Redemption isn't about erasing the past," I offered. "It's about creating a different future. The steps you're taking now, getting help, making honest changes, prioritizing what truly matters, that's the path forward." On Christmas morning, I woke to the sound of excited children outside my guest room door. Emma had indeed prepared the quarry's special hot chocolate, following my recipe with careful precision. As we all gathered in the family room to open modest gifts, I was struck by the genuine warmth of the occasion, so different from the lavish but emotionally hollow celebrations of previous years. Later that day, as Jason drove me to the airport, for my flight to Portland, he spoke words I had waited years to hear. "Thank you, Mom. Not just for Christmas, but for setting the boundaries I needed, for refusing to continue enabling behaviors that were destroying my life, for loving me enough to let me face the consequences of my actions." "That's what real love looks like sometimes," I said, squeezing his hand. "Not always giving what's wanted, but what's truly needed." As my plane took off that afternoon, carrying me toward the second half of my holiday celebration with Sophia's family, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past few weeks. What had begun with the pain of exclusion, being deemed not good enough for my son's Christmas table, had transformed into an unexpected liberation. By standing firm in my own worth, by refusing to continue unhealthy patterns of financial support, I had inadvertently created space for authentic change and healing. The luxury car payments I had canceled had been merely a symbol of a much deeper issue, a relationship built on financial dependence rather than mutual respect. By withdrawing that support, painful as it had been, I had ultimately given my son and his family something far more valuable: the opportunity to rebuild their lives on a foundation of truth rather than appearances, substance rather than status. 6. Months later, on a warm summer evening, I sat on the porch of Jason and Vanessa's new home, a modest rental in a friendly, unpretentious neighborhood with good public schools. The children played in the yard with neighborhood friends, their initial resistance to downsizing long forgotten in the simple joys of childhood. Jason, now 4 months sober, was rebuilding his architectural practice with an emphasis on affordable housing projects, working to restore his professional reputation through honest, ethical work. Vanessa had found part-time employment at a local community center, using her organizational skills to coordinate programs for families in need. Their marriage was still a work in progress, the trust slowly being rebuilt through therapy and painful honesty. My relationship with them had evolved as well, no longer defined by financial dependence, but by mutual respect and genuine affection. As I watched my grandchildren chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the difficult journey we had all traveled. By refusing to continue making those luxury car payments, I had helped set in motion a transformation none of us could have anticipated, one that had stripped away the superficial trappings of success to reveal the genuine connection and love that had been obscured beneath. Sometimes, I realized, the most valuable gift we can give those we love is the courage to say no, even when, especially when, it breaks our hearts to do so. "Grandma, look what I made in art class," Emma called out, rushing through my front door on a crisp autumn afternoon, holding up a ceramic sculpture that vaguely resembled a bird in flight. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, admiring her creation with genuine appreciation. At 13, Emma had blossomed into a thoughtful, creative young woman, so different from the frightened child who had appeared on my doorstep that fateful night 2 years ago. "Mom says to tell you we'll be here around 4 to help set up," she continued, placing her backpack on my kitchen counter with the comfortable familiarity of someone completely at home. "Dad's bringing the tables from the community center, and Lucas is in charge of the playlist." I smiled at her enthusiasm. "Perfect. That gives us plenty of time to finish the empanadas before everyone arrives." Tomorrow would mark my 70th birthday. And for the first time in decades, all 3 of my children and their families would be gathering to celebrate. Sophia and her family were flying in from Portland. Miguel and Luis were driving up from San Diego with their daughter, and Jason's family, now living just 20 minutes away, were handling most of the party arrangements. As Emma and I worked, side by side in the kitchen, shaping dough and preparing fillings, I reflected on the extraordinary transformation our family had undergone since that painful Christmas, when I had canceled the luxury car payments and set boundaries that changed everything. The initial months had been difficult. Jason and Vanessa had faced the humbling process of downsizing their life, selling their possessions, and adjusting to a dramatically different standard of living. The children had struggled with changing schools and leaving behind the privileged environment they had known. There had been tears, resentment, and moments when I questioned whether the hard boundaries I had established were truly for the best. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, healthier patterns had emerged. Jason, committed to his recovery program, had rebuilt his architectural practice with a new focus on sustainability and affordable housing. The professional misconduct allegations had resulted in a temporary suspension of his license, community service, and a substantial fine. Consequences that had been painful but necessary for his professional redemption. Vanessa, perhaps most surprisingly, had undergone the most profound transformation. After initially taking a part-time job at the community center out of financial necessity, she had discovered a genuine passion for nonprofit work. Now serving as their volunteer coordinator, she had developed authentic relationships outside the artificial social circles she had once prized. The woman who had once excluded me from Christmas because I wasn't prestigious enough now spent her weekends organizing food drives and fundraisers for families in need. Mom said to tell you that Grandpa and Grandma Whitmore are coming tomorrow. Too, Emma mentioned casually as she crimped the edge of an empanada. I glanced up in surprise. Edward and Catherine are coming to my birthday celebration? Emma nodded. They're different now, especially Grandpa. After Dad's gambling problem came out and they had to sell the house and everything, Grandpa was really mad at first, but then he started talking to Dad more. Like, really talking, not just telling him what to do. Out of the mouths of babes. Emma had captured something significant, the ripple effect of honest confrontation. Jason's crisis had apparently triggered some soul-searching in Edward Whitmore, a man who had embodied the pursuit of status and external validation. The fact that he was willing to attend my modest birthday celebration spoke volumes about changes in his own priorities. Later that afternoon, Jason arrived with folding tables and chairs borrowed from the community center. As he set them up in my small backyard, I brought him a glass of iced tea and observed the changes in my son. The designer clothes and carefully maintained appearance that had once been his uniform had given way to simple jeans and a well-worn t-shirt. The constant tension that had once radiated from him, the pressure of maintaining appearances, hiding his addiction, juggling unsustainable finances, had been replaced by a quiet authenticity that suited him far better. "How's the new project going?" I asked, referring to the affordable housing development he was designing for a nonprofit organization. "Really well," he replied with genuine enthusiasm. "We've incorporated some innovative, sustainable elements that will help keep utility costs down for residents, and the community input sessions have given us great ideas for shared spaces." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "It won't win any prestigious design awards, but it will provide quality homes for 35 families who would otherwise be priced out of the market." "That sounds far more meaningful than any award," I observed. He nodded thoughtfully. "I was talking about that with my sponsor last week. How I used to measure success entirely by external validation, industry recognition, impressive clients, photogenic projects. Now I'm finding so much more satisfaction in work that makes a tangible difference in people's lives." "Your father would be proud," I said softly. "He always valued substance over flash." "I think about him more now," Jason admitted, wondering what advice he would give about raising the kids, about rebuilding after failure. I wish I'd appreciated his wisdom. When I had the chance, the conversation might have turned melancholy, but we were interrupted by the arrival of Vanessa and the boys, arms laden with decorations and homemade signs proclaiming, "Happy 70th birthday, abuela," watching them transform my modest backyard. With simple but thoughtful decorations, I was struck by how our relationships had evolved. Where once I had been valued primarily as a financial resource, now I was cherished as a mother, grandmother, advisor, and friend. The boundaries I had established had not diminished my role in their lives, but enriched it, creating space for more meaningful connections. That evening, after everyone had gone home with plans to return the next day for the celebration, I sat on my patio reflecting on the journey of the past 2 years. My phone chimed with a text message from Sophia, letting me know their flight had landed and they were checked into their hotel. A moment later, another text arrived from Miguel with a photo of their daughter sleeping in their hotel room, Teddy, bear clutched tightly. As I prepared for bed, I noticed Emma had forgotten her ceramic bird sculpture on my kitchen counter. I picked it up, examining it more carefully now. Despite its abstract nature, I could see the care she had put into its creation, the carefully shaped wings, the proud tilt of the head. With her permission, I would keep it displayed on my bookshelf, not just because my granddaughter had made it, but because it was genuinely interesting and beautiful in its imperfection. That sculpture seemed to embody the lesson our family had learned so painfully, that true beauty and value come not from external polish or status symbols, but from authenticity, effort, and honest connection. My birthday celebration the next day was nothing like the meticulously orchestrated Instagram-worthy events that Vanessa had once specialized in creating. The decorations were handmade, the food was a potluck of family favorites, and the entertainment consisted of family stories, impromptu dancing, and Lucas's eclectic playlist. But as I looked around at the 3 generations gathered in my backyard, my children and their spouses, my grandchildren, even the Whitmores participating with surprising comfort in our modest festivities, I felt a fullness of heart that no luxury or status symbol could ever provide. When it came time for toasts, Jason stood, glass raised, eyes suspiciously bright. 2 years ago, our family was in crisis, he began, voice steady despite the emotion evident on his face. We were living a life built on appearances, debt, and deception. And in the middle of that crisis, Mom did the hardest thing a parent can do. She let us fail. She canceled those car payments, refused to bail us out, and forced us to face reality. He looked at me directly, love and gratitude evident in his expression. It felt like abandonment at the time. I was angry, resentful, convinced she had failed us when we needed her most. What I couldn't see then was that her refusal to continue enabling our destructive patterns was the most profound act of love possible. Vanessa stood beside him, taking his hand in a gesture of solidarity. We wouldn't be the family we are today without that difficult moment of truth. So today, as we celebrate 70 amazing years of Gloria Martinez's life, we're not just celebrating her birth, we're celebrating her courage, her wisdom, and her unwavering commitment to genuine love, even when that love required painful boundaries. As applause and affirmations erupted around the yard, I felt tears gathering. The journey from that painful Christmas exclusion to this moment of authentic connection had been difficult and complicated. There had been no magical transformations, no instant solutions, just the daily work of rebuilding trust, establishing healthier patterns, and learning to value substance over appearance. Later, as the party wound down and the autumn sun began to set, Edward Whitmore approached me, somewhat awkwardly offering a small wrapped package. "It's nothing extravagant," he said, the once dismissive businessman now showing hints of humility. "Just something Catherine and I thought you might appreciate." Inside the box was a simple silver frame containing a photograph I'd never seen before. Jason as a young boy, gap-toothed and grinning, proudly displaying a model building he had constructed. My late husband stood beside him, arm around his shoulders, equal pride evident on his face. "We found it while going through old photos," Edward explained. It seemed like something you should have. The thoughtfulness of the gift, not expensive or showy, but meaningful and personal, symbolized how far we had all come. The man who had once epitomized status-seeking materialism was learning, however gradually, to value deeper connections. As my family helped clean up after the party, working together with easy camaraderie and genuine affection, I thought about those luxury car payments I had canceled 2 years ago. That single act of boundary setting had seemed so drastic at the time, so potentially damaging to my relationship with my son. I could never have imagined that it would be the catalyst for such profound healing and transformation. Sometimes, I reflected, watching my grandchildren chase each other across the yard in the golden late afternoon light, the most valuable gifts we give our loved ones are not the ones that come with price tags. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is the courage to say no more, to stand firm in the knowledge that true worth cannot be purchased, that genuine connection cannot be maintained through financial dependence, and that real family bonds are strengthened, not weakened, by healthy boundaries and honest confrontation. When Emma skipped over to show me the photographs she had taken throughout the day, her face alight with joy and creative satisfaction, I knew with absolute certainty that canceling those luxury car payments had been the best decision I had ever made, not just for myself, but for all of us. "Look, Grandma," she said, scrolling through images of our imperfect, authentic, genuinely happy family. "Aren't we beautiful?" "Yes," I agreed, pulling her close. "We truly are." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.